Welcome to SB 1383 Compliance Data as Fuel for Behavior Change. A couple of announcements. If you could please wait until all of the speakers have given their presentation for questions. And if you could please speak into the microphone when you have your question so the online audience can hear. So I'd just like to introduce our speakers. Please welcome Alan Ha, City of Milpitas. Lisa Coelho from Routeware. And Izchel Pulido from City of San Ramon. So I think Alan and Lisa will be kicking off the presentation together. Take it away.
All right, let's go ahead. Excuse me while I trip over everything.
Oh, I can't really see it.
No, I mean, that's one of the reasons.
Do you want...
I was like, oh, you should have totally threw it at me.
Ready? All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for choosing us over CalRecycle. We really appreciate your support. So we have a story for you today. So my name is Lisa, as indicated by our lovely moderator, Judy, and I work for Routeware and specialize in the Recyclist program tracker product. But my induction in the waste industry actually started 8 years ago with a challenge. I had a college professor that challenged me to research something I love, find a gap in data, and fill it. And I chose commercial organics recycling, and everyone laughed. And they said that would not be a real thing. You can't get all the different staff at a restaurant to possibly recycle their organics. But as fate would have it, my friends in Sunnyvale felt differently, and they invited me to join the rollout of their commercial food scraps program in response to 1826. And I can't believe that was 8 years ago. Here we are still doing it. So my mentors taught me to explore the human behaviors around waste management. And I began scouring the internet, posting on forums, and that's where I found my gap. How were we going to get businesses to put their food scraps in this new green cart? And as 1383 rulemaking launched, I saw my next gap and future in a glimmering yellow vest. I began doing all the possible research I could, as I mentioned, posting in forums, seeking expertise from mentors, and then we began collecting our own data. And that's about when Alan and I met, knee-deep at a waste sort, talking about how we both planned a lot of programs and we both evaluated a lot of programs, but it was pretty rare to have an opportunity to plan and evaluate the same program. So we started going on hikes on Friday afternoons to talk about each side of our route review story. And I'm sorry we couldn't take you on a hike today, but we're here to tell you the story.
Good afternoon, everyone. As indicated by the program slides and the conference program, I am Alan Ha, Administrative Analyst for the City of Milpitas Solid Waste Program. The path that led me here was not very straightforward. It meandered quite a bit. I started off as an intern in local government and was very quickly disillusioned at the pace at which anything seemed to occur. Also, with the power of hindsight and looking back now, I have this distinct feeling that when we're young, we just have this undue pressure that we put on ourselves to just do things. So I ran away screaming, and I stumbled into consulting. And this was impactful because of the sheer variety of work, pace, and projects I was able to get myself engaged in. And it was actually here that I started to learn about all the different types of analyses that we needed to conduct in order to get to the heart of what our clients were asking from us. Stumbling out of consulting, I stumbled my way into nonprofit, and this really shaped the way of how I go about engaging with projects and tasks. Because when you're required to do things with effectively no support and no resources, you learn to be really creative at how projects are carried out, how data is analyzed and collected, and how to put the data to use. It comes full circle. Don't worry, I'll pick that up later. For the people online, I'm throwing index cards around, so that's what's happening behind the scenes. And it now comes full circle because now I'm back with local government with a much better understanding and appreciation of how all this frontline work is useful. Because now I get to use data not just to create programs and policies to be in compliance, but also to better our communication and our programs in our communities. Plus, now I actually know why it takes so long to do anything. And, no, that's right. As we all know, SB 1383 requires ongoing contamination monitoring. This presented a unique opportunity because in our previous lifetimes, we've always thought about how we can collect and utilize data in more meaningful ways, or how we can go about verifying the impacts from our programs. For us at Milpitas, with the help from Recyclist, SB 1383 happened to be the vehicle that we're choosing to accomplish something beyond compliance for compliance sake. As Lisa alluded to earlier, we've had many discussions, chats, venting sessions, regarding data and its less than optimal use. Because here's the thing. Compliance is important, of course, but compliance alone does not set the stage for more. And what I mean by that is that legislation often sets the floor, it does not set the ceiling. And if that's the case, then we get to decide how high we want the ceiling to be. And as anticlimactic or strange as it may sound, flipping lids might be one of the ways we can go about setting up those high ceilings, if we do it intelligently.
Well, our industry has been flipping lids long before 1383, so why is that such a valuable evaluation method? You know that saying that waste does not speak, but it sure says a lot about people? We found that to be pretty true. I mean, have you ever seen inside a container, a commercial organics container, and noticed bagels, disposable coffee cups, and coffee grounds, and you can just start to picture that morning meeting? You know those attendees were a little bit more tired than they were hungry. And you might reach out to that business and talk to them about buying less, or sending extras home with employees, or just taking a few minutes after their parties to empty their containers of food and coffee grounds into that new green bin. But how do we get to those conclusions? Well, lid flips, route reviews, visual inspections, whatever you want to call them, are visual observations of a container. You can all probably guess a business type by a picture of an interior container, so we tried to make this one a little extra tricky for you. So I'll give you a minute while I keep on rambling. But the point is, this type of data analysis allows you to assess things like set-out rates, participation rates, and trends in contamination. You can identify what type of material a business is generating, how much, and even roughly when in their operations this waste is occurring. If you take enough of these data points spread over time and geographical location, you can really extrapolate your data across an entire jurisdiction or even a region. In fact, you could probably assess with other types of data mixed in if that fork or plastic bag in the organics is really that big of a deal or not. Take it away, Alan. So here are the results.
Did any of you get close? Hopefully you did.
Did anyone get all four?
Yes. If you did, give yourself a round of applause. So speaking of data and records, we all know that record keeping is a big deal of SB 1383. The way that we thought about the major components of SB 1383 in Milpitas is that there are a lot of different buckets representing different requirements, and record keeping was the bucket that held all the other buckets together. And we figured we had several options to go about handling this. We could, one, build our own system for record keeping and data management, but this would have been significant time and energy investment from staff. Also, if there were to be any staff turnover or incoming new staff, they may not understand why certain parts of the record keeping system was built the way that it was. Two, we could utilize the CalRecycle templates, and this was really tempting because these resources came directly from CalRecycle, so we knew that they were effectively signed off on. And for those of you online, I'm throwing air quotes around signed off. However, it doesn't change the fact that it will still require a lot of manual data input and management. Or three, you could procure services for this so you don't really need to worry about it, and that's what we decided to do. And we did this because we knew that it will save us time and energy and allow us to focus on the other buckets of SB 1383, such as program planning and implementation. Also, it gave us more time at the end for data analytics because we didn't need to spend all that time for data management.
It's my favorite part. I remember when I was collecting outreach on pen and paper and manually entering it into Excel. Man, it wasn't actually that hard the first year of any program, but that's because you had a clean slate to work with. It's in those subsequent years when you have city staff, haulers, and consultants all trying to collaborate in the same document. I remember we were overwriting each other's data. Some consistency in nomenclature would be a problem. And I was often sitting in my car before and after site visits, flipping through Google Sheets and many documents. I'm talking spreadsheets with multiple tabs, macros, functions. And when it would break, I would call for assistance at a rate of $220 an hour. And that's when I had this moment of realization that as a consultant, every minute I spent trying to fix a spreadsheet was tracked against my outreach budget. And I would have to choose between maintaining a spreadsheet or more touch points with that generator. And that didn't sit very well with me. I mean, why try to solve a problem someone else had already solved? And I did know about Recyclist, but I don't like changing work habits, so I still had my reservations. But once I finally was let loose in a program tracker, my brain set on fire. I could zoom in to the tiny details about a generator, provide outreach, really focus on that behavior change, enter everything into a simple form, and watch it add up. And then by looking at those reports, I could figure out where I needed to go next to have the greatest impact. So we gave it a shot. I clearly liked it enough to join the team at Recyclist. And right around that time, they were launching the first version of the route review tool, and Alan was also onboarding as a customer. So you probably won't be surprised to hear that Alan analyzed every single detail of that route review feature, and he had a few very important requests for customizations. The City of Milpitas asked us if we could customize their contamination streams within the program tracker. And it turned out this was very valuable context that they were able to provide. And now, not only Alan, but many of you here have contributed to a very long list of requests to improve our route review feature. So please keep those coming, because that's my favorite part about Lisa and Alan working together again.
And boom, what a team we make. The sheer amount of conversations that we've had about utilizing data for outreach is staggering. So on that note, let's go ahead and talk about your E&Os, that is your education and outreach. E&O for us started with one basic question. When is the best time to provide education to a generator? Because let's face it, everyone is hammered by all kinds of messages throughout the day on all kinds of media channels. What should you eat? Wear these clothes. Do your taxes with us. Do this to increase your passive income. Do this to learn how you can recycle better. So on and so forth. Because of this, we are cognizant of how low email and snail mail open rates are. So we decided that direct outreach, providing immediate feedback at the point of throw, would be the most helpful. Now, this doesn't mean that we're not doing an outreach campaign. It only means that we're changing the starting point for many of our generators, especially those that have received the route review. So we did our best, and we worked to create an oops tag that will not only provide immediate feedback, but also additional information about our programs. We looked at our collection system and worked to create simple to understand broad categories that could not only help our generators do a better job sorting, but also at the same time specific enough to help target behavior towards different material sets. We also didn't want so many categories. Well, it'd just be an arduous task just to even make it through the oops tag. And as Lisa mentioned earlier, we worked with Recyclist to make sure that the contamination categories were incorporated into the program tracker for easy one-to-one data capture and analysis later on. Now, I have no delusions that what we've done will work for everyone, but it does work for us and the messages that we're trying to push out to our community. And I hope that all of you would take the time to do something similar to make sure that your outreach collateral helps target behaviors that you want your community to be engaged in. And I'll stress again, we'll still be doing an outreach campaign through social media, mailings, newsletters, the whole shebang, and despite the low open and engagement rates. And this is because we know that one touch from outreach doesn't do very much. It takes repeated exposure for ideas to sink in and to create habit. And because not everyone is getting a route review at the same time, this will actually reach people at different points in the process. So, this next part is probably the part that people are most interested in. And then, so hang in there, you're in for a ride. We know that there are two ways of satisfying compliance, compliance toward contamination monitoring: route reviews and waste evaluations. Route reviews, lid flips, waste evaluations, visual assessments, not waste evaluations, strike that. But visual assessments, they all mean the same thing. Pretty much you roll up to a container, flip the lid, and record your findings, boom, you're done. On to the next. Waste evaluations are waste characterization studies by any other name. You pretty much grab your standardized sample size, you drop it on a table so you don't absolutely destroy your back sorting, and then you sort all the material into different categories, weigh everything out, record your data, boom, you're done. If it was as simple to say as it was to do, I'd still be doing that type of work. No, this is a young person's game and I'm not having that anymore. Regardless of what you choose, both would actually produce really useful information, but we decided to go with route reviews, obviously, for now. Because one, we have the ability to do it in-house, two, it'll be relatively fast, and three, we have software to help us capture the data. And the picture over here is from one of our team members out in the field doing a route review, slapping an oops tag onto the generator. Take that. I won't get into the nitty-gritty of it because that's not the intent of this presentation, but what I will say is that we utilized statistical sampling methodology and calculations to figure out how many route reviews we needed. You don't need to be a statistician to do this. I'm not. I'm just some guy that likes looking at data and numbers in a dark closet somewhere. So if this is not your wheelhouse, the answer to everything is Google. There are tons of free online tools that you can utilize in order to do things like figure out sample sizes. You can always bring on a consultant. This is pretty standard in our field and they know what they're doing. And the reason that we're doing it in this manner is because we want to make sure that we're collecting enough samples to have the data be statistically significant. Now, it is a world of difference between having hundreds of data points telling you something and something like 3 data points telling you something. I mean, would you have the same level of confidence in your decision-making skills if you're only relying on a handful of points? Maybe not. If we're required to do this anyways, let's make sure that we're doing it right and that the data is actually meaningful. And as Lisa mentioned earlier, we met with Recyclist, got the lowdown on their platform, and wrote up an entire methodology document for route reviews in our jurisdiction to standardize the process for our team. Also, if something terrible were to happen, like I got hit by a bus or mauled by a bear or abducted by aliens, or maybe something a little less awful, like we bring on new team members, everything is documented, everything is written out, and everyone is starting off at the same exact point of understanding and expectations. We selected our samples utilizing random sampling methodology, with some differences between residential and commercial to remove any biases that we may have and to also make sure that our data selection and process was solid. And by continuing to collect data for compliance over time utilizing these methods, we start to get a clearer and clearer picture of the habits of our generators over time. And as I stated earlier, we decided early on that our route reviews would be conducted internally by our solid waste team. In another lifetime, and in fact in both of our previous lifetimes, we've done a lot of frontline data collection, and I found that it is immensely helpful to have the experience and understanding about what's going on in the field. It becomes less of a stretch in figuring out how your residents and businesses are interacting with your programs, and at the same time, you get to build your team's shared knowledge base. And if you're all on the same page, it actually becomes easier to do the data analyses later on. Will the data actually show you what you thought to be true all along, or will it show you that things aren't exactly what it seems? Either way, it will inform us about how we go about developing our messages.
Yes, Alan, analytical outreach. I love that so much because this is where all that reflection we've gone through today connects. I mean, the goal of reducing waste is going to require more behavior change, and the purpose of outreach is to encourage the desired behaviors like organics recycling in the correct containers and mitigate the unwanted ancillary behaviors like contaminating that recycling cart. And as you mentioned before, Alan, we know that behavior change takes a lot of repetition to become a new habit. So to know if we're truly progressing, don't we have to measure a baseline and analyze it over time? Or how else do we know if our outreach is having the desired impact that we want? So with an annual requirement to do route reviews, we actually have an opportunity, and yeah, I'm going to call route reviews an opportunity at risk of getting stoned up here, but we can analyze trends over time, year after year, with an existing requirement. And locally, nationally, and globally, this is something we use to evaluate recycling programs, organics programs, and food waste prevention programs all over. So Milpitas did something pretty cool along those lines, because Alan and I talk about this a lot, and I'm really going to geek out here, but they joined Santa Clara County's food waste prevention pilot. And the research question was, could food waste prevention outreach reduce the amount of organics in the cart? And yeah, that's probably not what we're thinking about at first with 1383, and the goal being to get as much organics into the cart as we can, but this is actually a pretty great idea. And Alan's team intentionally placed the study area on their route review site selection list. So year after year, they're evaluating that same sample area, leveraging their resources, and measuring behavior change over time. I mean, this is so freaking cool, Alan.
I mean, it is actually pretty darn cool. Guess what? Exciting news. We started to distribute the education or the outreach collateral based upon the 2022 data analyses and data collected from the route reviews last year. But before we get to that, I wanted to highlight some interesting tidbits of data from Milpitas, especially because Milpitas collects food scraps separately in its own separate container. Just hang on for the ride and don't worry too much about the graphics and stuff on the slide. Just want to make sure there were pretty colors and things for people to look at if you didn't want to focus on us. Just look at it again at the recording later on. So looking into the residential sector, and Milpitas, we have like split carts. So pretty much imagine your standard like 64 or 96 gallon cart with a divider in the middle. Each side actually it collects different material. Like one side is garbage, one side is food scraps. So that I may get tripped up in the language, but I want to make sure that when I say split carts, everyone knows what I'm talking about. So when we looked into the residential sector, we noted that of the sample containers, 42% had no prohibited contaminants, and 23% had prohibited contaminants, but it actually wasn't that bad, making a total participation of sampled containers being 65%. This number alone completely shattered and debunked the way that we thought about our program, because we thought that no one was utilizing our food scraps collection bins. And so that was really eye-opening. And digging into the data, that we're able to isolate out our top 3 contaminants, which in the residential sector are your non-recyclable plastics, plastic bags, film, and wrap. And for one reason or another, clean cardboard and paper. I don't really understand why that's confusing, but there you go. Moving right along into the commercial sector, of the sampled containers, 39% had prohibited contaminants, which isn't bad at face value. But if you look at the fact that an additional 26% of the time sample bins were empty, and I mean like they look clean and good and like it just came straight from the yard, we can pretty much say that 65% of sampled containers was being misused in some way, shape, or form. And digging into the commercial sector data, the top contaminants are your plastic bags, film, and wrap, recyclable containers, non-compostable food packaging, non-recyclable plastics, and for one reason or another, still clean cardboard and paper, and I don't understand why that's confusing, but there you go, that's what the data says. So what did we do? We took all of this information, as well as all the data collected for the other waste streams, and did our analyses. Then we met with our hauler, Milpitas Sanitation, and we had a really interesting discussion regarding the findings. Based on our discussions, since we started developing ideas about messages we wanted to craft and how we wanted to approach it. And what we decided was that each sector will get their own message, that is residential versus commercial versus MFD, because we had the ability to section out the MFD data, because they all behave differently. And boom. But here is some of the outreach collateral that is going out. This is an electronic newsletter that we operate. I shouldn't say we, like one of our team members over there. Hi, Savannah. And this goes out to residents. And this is the first part of a series that we're doing, highlighting different contaminants and how people can do better. moving right along, here are some outreach pieces that came out from MSI, Milpitas Sanitation, that is going out to different sectors as well. On the left is a one going out to MFD accounts, because they have a newsletter of their own. And then the right over here, which is pretty cool, is a proof of an ad that actually was placed in a local newspaper. So, analytical outreach, which, as Lisa said earlier, that's pretty damn cool.
Like that cardboard up there too. Well, thank goodness we're all in this together, because this 1383 thing is going to take all of us. And if our journeys have taught us anything, you really can do more with less. But who came up with that terrible saying? Anyway, so I think by planning ahead, leveraging your resources, and relying on each other, we really can run our programs more efficiently and buy that capacity to have those special moments of touch and behavior change influence, if that's really where we want to spend our time. So I think it's worth it to plan ahead and influence more positive change with whatever resources we do have.
And to make that positive change, you have to be committed to doing the work that is needed. So Milpitas, we're going to continue to develop our outreach campaign and messaging, and we're in process of conducting the next round of route reviews, because we all know it never stops. But what I hope that we spoke about has helped highlight our message, which is 1, have the right data capture and tracking system for you. 2, plan and collect data in a meaningful way. And 3, use the data for program growth and improvement. And by doing so, and embracing the drivers of SB 1383, we can use compliance data as fuel for meaningful behavior change. Hopefully, we'll have a chance to share with all of you again how the story will continue to unfold. Thank you very much.
Can you just close that out? So again, as a reminder, we're going to take questions after the second presentation, which will be the last presentation. And so at this point, I'd like to bring up Izchel from the City of San Ramon. And I'm going to get out of the way.
Good luck.
Sorry.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chel Polito. Oh, is there a tissue? Hi, everyone. So my name is Izchel Pulido. I am the Sustainability Specialist for the City of San Ramon, and I am very hungry, so this is going to go by very, very quickly. So I am here to talk today about Recyclist and how it allowed the City of San Ramon to reach its SB 13, some of its SB 1383 requirements. Right, so both my manager and I had read the SB 1383 regulation text numerous times. She read it more times than I did. And so we understood that there was going to be a lot of data management, data collection, tracking, and reporting involved. And to be honest, we also understood that it would require a lot of hard work. So we knew we had a couple of challenges ahead of us. So some of those challenges consisted of keeping track of over 400 accounts, and that's just multifamily and commercial accounts. Again, we had way too much too much information to keep track of. So not just the number of accounts and the type of accounts, but route reviews, tier 1 inspections, and now tier 2 inspections, unfortunately, and then outreach and types of outreach. So it's just too much information to track. We also had very limited access to our hauler software program, and even if they did grant us full access, we would require training and someone with a lot of patience to train us. Now, a fourth challenge, and this is something we thought a lot about, and that is, how do we even know we are on the road to compliance? What if we think that we're doing this amazing job, but in reality, we're only like 30% of the way there? So definitely a challenge. And lastly, I'm sure this is a challenge that every single jurisdiction has faced, and that is we just don't have enough staff. In the City of San Ramon, it's just my manager and I. We do have my colleagues from ACI who help us with audits and outreach, but when it comes to reporting and looking at all this data, it's just my manager and I. Now, so this is where Recyclist comes in, and everyone here is familiar with Recyclist. You all know what Recyclist does, but for those of you who don't, it is a data management and tracking platform for waste diversion programs. Now, that is not the most eloquent explanation of Recyclist. However, we have Lisa Coelho here. So during the Q&As, please feel free to ask her for a more eloquent explanation of what Recyclist does. So again, Recyclist has all these great features, but I'm not going to talk about all of them, just a couple that my colleagues and I thought were very helpful for us. All right, so for this first feature, data collection and tracking, I'll be using the account 3141 Crow Canyon Place, or as my colleagues and I refer to it, we refer to it as 3141. So this was a very challenging, sorry, they're making me laugh. This was a very challenging account for us. It had been a problem account since late 2021, maybe early 2022. And I will say that COVID played a role in it being a challenging account for us. There were issues with its service levels. It had an adequate service. They were contaminating everything. Like there was organic material in their compactor as well as recyclables. They had recyclables in their organics bin. They also had like garbage in the recycling bin. It was a total mess. None of the tenants were trained. And then to top it off, the account holder was in denial that there was even a problem. Just to let you know, they actually paid for about 30 go-backs in a year. So that's a lot of money, and that's when a tenant has to pay money to the hauler to just go back and have it empty either as garbage or as clean recyclables. Either way, they have to pay for that truck to go back. Alrighty. So as soon as my colleagues and I gained access to Recyclist, we started inputting all our data into Recyclist. All of our audits, notes, pictures, outreach attempts, everything went onto Recyclist. So it really helped us keep track of all of our activities, right? And then we used all these inputs to show the account holder all the work that we had conducted, everything we had done, to show them that we were just putting in so much of our effort and time into helping them reach compliance. And in a way, it also helped us discern a pattern, or maybe a lack of a pattern. We realized that my colleagues and I were spending so much time on this account. We were consistently calling them, emailing them, conducting audits, but nothing was happening on their end. So besides using this information to create a report for the account holder, we also used some of the pictures to show them that they indeed had a problem. That report didn't really work, but I will show you guys what changed their mind. So my colleague went ahead and conducted an audit on their 25-yard compactor. We had mentioned to them several times that there was a lot of organic material and recyclables in their garbage compactor, and this proved it. This was actually the picture that finally got them to start collaborating with the city and with ACI. I had a video, which was really cool, but I couldn't find it. So yes, not the report, but this picture is what convinced them. All right, so I do want to mention, this is not a feature I was going to mention initially. However, I wanted to bring up this app because this actually a facilitated collaboration between the city and ACI. It made audits easier for my colleagues and I. It's on an app, so it was very helpful to have all this information in our hands, pretty much. All right, so for this second feature, it was incredibly helpful in that it had all the information located in one place. So this meant that everyone had equal access to audit information, and it was easier to maintain as well. So by having a centralized data management, it also meant that we didn't have to use Google Sheets or Excel, which was very exciting for me. So, by the way, if anyone's using Google Sheets, Excel, and it's working for you, that's great. Keep using it. It just wasn't going to work for the City of San Ramon. I've worked for jurisdictions where I had to maintain several Excel sheets, so I felt like I was just spending most of my workday maintaining this Excel sheet and not conducting outreach. Okay. Now, compliance tracking. This was one of my favorite features initially. I used it extensively. So basically, this gave us an idea of how San Ramon was doing in terms of compliance, right? And initially there was a lot of red in the City of San Ramon, but my colleagues and I were able to isolate the non-compliant accounts and then tackle those. We either had to conduct outreach or maybe they were missing cards because other tenants steal cards. So it really helped us in helping those accounts become compliant with SB 1383. So as time went by, we saw that red section get smaller and smaller and smaller, which was quite satisfying. In the pie chart that you guys see below, that's what San Ramon's compliance looks like right now, through a lot of hard work. All right, so we're almost done. For this last feature, I was very appreciative to have this feature this year because it was my first year working on the electronic annual report. So I really like this feature. So all of our data that we input throughout the year, it's all counted, it's all categorized, right? It's all tracked, and then when I was working on the EAR, I realized that Recyclist actually will generate their own version of CalRecycle's EAR. And after figuring that out, I just had to double check the numbers and then enter that information into the CalRecycle EAR. And it was quite satisfying to know that all of our data entry efforts did not go in vain. I've worked in collecting a lot of data before, only for it to not get used, which kind of made me cry on the inside. And I do want to say that all my colleagues played a role in collecting and entering all this data. So it wasn't just me or my manager, it was my colleagues over at ACI. Whenever they conducted audits, outreach, they would input all that information into Recyclist. So it's not like this program is doing, the Recyclist program isn't doing all this work for us, it's just us entering all this data. It would be great if it did that, but I think it would be more expensive. So Recyclist is this innovative tool that helped the City of San Ramon meet some of its SB 1383 requirements in such a way that it helps the city save time and resources that we can then invest in other programs that will benefit the city and its community. For example, we are really looking forward into further developing our volunteer trash talker program. And these are high school students who volunteer at certain city events, and they pretty much educate the public on waste reduction and on proper sorting. And before I forget, I really want to thank my colleagues because this is all a team effort. I know at first it was very difficult for my colleagues. They have to enter information into Recyclist and then into their hauler software program. So I really want to thank them for their patience and their time. Yeah. And that's it. And we get to eat.
All right, before we get to audience questions, I wanted to read the 2 online questions that we've received. Oh, is there 3 now? Okay, 3. I lied. 3.
Oh, nice.
So first question, are there any data types that you foresee being helpful moving forward that aren't currently required but could start to be tracked now?
Do you want this? Because, I mean, it's talking data. I feel like we can talk data forever.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean, I hesitate to say this just because I don't want to offend any of the other data heads, but I'm kind of a data head. And for me, the more information that you can collect, the better, because who knows what kind of information or what data points are actually going to be useful down the line. And because, I mean, what we're collecting right now, types of contaminants, size of the container, or service levels, all of that is useful, but then all of that in tandem with each other will also lead to really interesting analyses. Like I had a thought the other day that I've done an analysis for if when there is contaminant and in a stream, is it a higher likelihood that it's going to be sets of 3 or more, or sets of 2? So I did a deep dive in that, but then I thought, well, wait a minute, maybe I can actually relate this to the size of the container as well. Does the larger the bin size, does that equate to more frequency of contamination having a chance of happening? And it's just hard to tell because you can ask an endless amount of questions and collect an endless amount of data. But so I guess the PC response is, what is the bare minimum that the Cal Recycle is asking? And then you decide how much more you want to collect on top of that.
I love how you are going against pay as you go now. Start that.
Yeah.
I would also say the why. So the reason is investigating further and going into the why are these things happening? Why is this business struggling? Why are you seeing these patterns? And try to lead to maybe some more creative outcomes. I think the numbers do say a lot, but there's usually a story behind them, and we don't get to collect as much of that data as I'd like to. What's happening in the home, what's happening inside the business, because we're sure as heck not sorting at the bins. So I think tracing it upstream, and then also the cost of these things. I think shout out to Gigantic, they've done some wonderful projects, and you can actually look at your cost of your outreach campaign and spending a little bit more upfront to get greater results on the other side, and make those strategic decisions. So hire a professional if it's going to get you the numbers you want on the other side.
Eloquently said. For me, it would also be the why. So I'm just piggybacking on my colleague's answer.
High five for that.
High five.
All right, next question. What type of data is best collected to get a gauge on successful behavior change in all of the various aspects of SB 1383? That's a big question.
Yeah.
That's a 200-page question.
Yeah, just speaking from my very limited point of view at this point in time, the unfortunate reality to measure success is how the data changes over time. Because yes, we have a lot of data points in 2022, but that's 1 year. Or now we're collecting data for 2023. I mean, if you aggregate everything, and it's not a trend yet, it's just a line, and it's like 2 points. So to actually measure success, unfortunately, it would be looking at data and how it changes over time. I mean, yes, as increases in the amount of participants in generators and such would definitely show you whether or not you're on the right path, but you don't really know how it's going to turn out until you have more data points over time to work with. I'm sorry, that's just how I'm looking at it. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm glad to be wrong if someone can tell me otherwise.
I think we also still have like a lot of data to put together and to piece together. There's those capacity studies for organics diversion, for edible food recovery. There's new waste characterization data. There's now the entire state working on different outreach campaigns and doing route reviews. And I think being able to put these data points together and compare like regional differences and how context is affecting the outcomes could be really powerful. So I think sometimes it's also just doing more with the data that we do have could be a wonderful opportunity.
Sorry, falling off. Chel? Yeah, anything back?
No comments.
Okay, last question from online for now. Is data available for school districts to promote stronger SB 1383 participation?
They're an entirely different animal, and they're very challenging to work with. So we don't really have
Okay, you can
any.
say it.
San Ramon, we don't, I mean, we have tons and tons of resources for these schools. They never take us up on their offer. I don't know if we have enough data. Yeah, sorry.
right.
Reach out to the K-12 TC, shout out CRRA subcommittee or
Yeah.
Right
technical
on.
committees. I'm sure there's some great data that we could be using. And I know there are people working tirelessly on schools. We don't personally have like a report to share now, but I think we can pull the audience. Does anyone have great school data or a good success story that they want to share?
It's like, please raise your hand. We'd love to
Raise
connect
your hand,
with
write
you.
it in.
Don't be shy. Anyone?
No.
Okay. All right, let's take some questions from the audience.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I just want to say probably my favorite feature on Recyclist is the fact that you guys include a map, which helps a lot with, routing and like scheduling site visits. Do you guys have any plans for incorporating any other kind of, I guess, GIS light, types of analysis or, kind of helping out with that end of things?
I can say that we are working on putting together product roadmaps and sharing them with our customers. So hopefully soon that will come your way and you'll get a peek on an ongoing basis into what we're planning for the future. But if you have a specific request, send it in. You can write it to me or support@recyclist.co. Don't worry, that email's back up and running. And we take the suggestions, we vote on them, so the more of you that repeat the same thing, we take that into account. We appreciate that feedback.
Just want to say thank you for that presentation. I got a ton out of it, and I'm going to take advantage of the fact that we have a lot of time for Q&A to hit you with a few. It's so funny that I never thought about using route reviews in the way that you're describing for year-to-year improvement in things, because I don't see Cal Recycle asking for that yet. So I think you have to be a forward-thinking jurisdiction to even be doing that. I'd love to see Cal Recycle, if they're in the room, like have us more in the regs that requires us to do anything more than just report on the fact that we did it. So that's just a side note. I also wanted to say that, Alan, I'm familiar with Milpitas' program. The fact that you separate out yard waste from food scraps really makes it so you can do that side-by-side analysis and maybe make some corollaries to see if you saw a significant reduction in the amount of food scraps, then it would be because of that, not because it's also full with yard waste. So if anybody had any ideas how somebody who has a co-collected yard and food waste program might be able to do some of that same analysis, I'd be interested in hearing those ideas. And then the last thing is for Izchel. I saw on your slideshow newsletters and other publications, but I didn't hear really what you had done within Recyclist with those things. And I know what it is because I work with you, but I think it's one of the most innovative things that I see San Ramon doing is really everything that goes out, you're tracking it. So I wanted you to expand a little bit more about your efforts on that.
Yeah, so every single piece of outreach that is sent out to commercial, single-family, multi-family accounts or anything that the city sends out to its residents. It's all recorded into Recyclist, and in the end, that all is counted and contributes to the numbers that we provide Cal Recycle.
Let's see, I'm just trying to figure out how to phrase this. So first off, thank you for the kind words. I don't particularly think that I'm very forward-thinking. And in fact, I'm lost in the weeds a lot looking at the bugs. You remember where that phrase comes from. I'm mostly just curious. And thankfully for me, it's not just me. I have a really good team that I'm working with, and I'm going to embarrass them a little bit because they're here in the audience. And so my team, and Mivan, Savannah, Erwin, can you raise your hands real quick? These are the folks that I work with, and they entertain the harebrained ideas that come outside of my head. And realistically, without their support, I won't have the time, energy, or inclination to even do these types of analyses because I'll be too busy running around trying to put out fires. So without their help and support, I won't be able to do these analyses. So thank you very much.
I'm going to try not to get fired and just repeat something Izchel said before. But our product isn't building your programs while you're sleeping at night at Recyclist. The program tracker is trying to highlight all the good work that you've done. And it does take manual data entry sometimes. It takes many conversations with us. It takes providing your feedback and being willing to invest into that time. So really, I just wanted to point out, as much as I feel like our praises have been sung, our whole point is to show off all you're doing for your programs. And that's been part of all of our journeys, is like, we've been there with you in the trenches and really appreciate, like, it's blood, sweat, tears.
Lots of tears.
Yeah. Watery spinach on your glass, like, it's everything. So thank you all for putting in the work in these programs, and like having the opportunity to see it on the back end and see all those totals add up and across all of the jurisdictions in the state is really awesome. To like see all this data starting to come in. So I'm very impressed and honored to get to be a part of the journey at all. Back to you, Ellen. Tell a joke or something.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Lisa and everyone else. I've been implementing recycling programs since the days of AB 341 and dealing then AB 1826 and dealing with spreadsheets and Google Sheets and whatnot. And so I've really appreciated when we got Recyclist in 2018 that really was supposed to simplify things and kind of streamline everything. But for some reason, we decided to keep using entering data into Recyclist, and then also into our software account management software that we use, Softpack, and then still doing Google Sheets. So what's the point of all of that if we have this amazing tool? Is anyone here in the room still using multiple data management softwares if you have Recyclist already? I mean, I see this as really like doing double, triple work, if we have this amazing tool. By the way, the route reviews, I love it. You are able to enter the pictures and description of what you're seeing. So that's been like very helpful for us, and also the compliance, as far as the waivers go, is just amazing, So thank you.
I think the only thing I have to add to that, we do capture data and other systems, but this is usually for data that's currently not tracked in Recyclist, because we know that Lisa's working on a lot of asks that we already gave her. I'm sorry. Like sometimes the things that we want to track in the program tracker just aren't there yet. So until then, we are tracking it in a separate system, whether it's a Excel spreadsheet or a Google Sheet or otherwise. But we're effectively anything that's already good in Recyclist, we try not to duplicate the work because that's time I'm spent away from other stuff. And I can't justify that. sorry, microphone, I didn't mean to hit you. But yeah, I fully realize like, okay, it's a new system and maybe you want to do your due diligence to make sure no data is lost, and I fully embrace that. But after a certain point, if the data looks good, maybe it's time to wean yourself off of the other stuff and only capture the stuff that's currently not yet in the program tracker, whatever your system is.
Yeah, thank you. What about City of San Ramon?
Yeah, I'm very happy to no longer have to use Excel. I tried using Google Sheets, it wasn't working for me. I believe when I was, before I was hired, when my manager and I were trying to figure out whether I was going to be a good fit and San Ramon was a good fit for me, my first question was, are we using Recyclist? And they said yes. I'm like, great, so that means no Excel sheets. That's why I'm so happy. So.
Yeah, that should be a standard interview question.
Yeah. And just so everyone knows, we're like gatekeeping for like happy hour. So, feel free to ask as many questions as you'd like, but the moment this ends, we can all get out.
Sorry to keep everyone from happy hour. My name is Felicia Castaneda. I'm with HF&H Consultants. I'm curious, so I have a number of clients who have Recyclist but have not been using it to their full potential, so I'm really excited to bring all this knowledge to them. And I'm wondering in particular about the features in Recyclist where, for example, you can log a site visit and then there's an opportunity for you to put in some notes in like a description table or something. Is the data that you put into those fields where you can type something in, does that get aggregated in any way, or is there any way to put in like keywords there that would then be aggregated? And if so, or if not, is that a possibility? I'm particularly thinking about when you have multiple people, maybe your hauler and your city and consultants all inputting data into Recyclist, and they're all inputting things in a slightly different way. And so like what does that collaboration look like to make sure that data is getting input there in a way that can then be aggregated?
And you're talking specifically about like site visit notes and different types of activity text fields?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do have a number of customers that have started kind of putting into an internal framework, like how Alan was talking, like a methodology document of some kind where they're using consistent keywords. In one example, it's like a SHRI program code, or site visit this day, like having some standard nomenclature that they're using. And you actually can search your all activities report by the notes field, so you can query for those keywords and see summaries. You can export it and do a few different things with it. So it depends what way you're looking for it to be aggregated. But if you were, for example, looking for all school tabling events at elementary school and you would use certain keywords, you can easily pull that.
Just as an example of how we use the notes field, especially for route reviews, is usually we talk about internally in order to standardize the language. But like an instance I can specifically point out is that we're using the field to note things like broken or missing splits or lids. But the way that we're all putting in that data point was different, but pretty much we catch it pretty quickly because internally after we do a day of like route reviews, like one of us, we're doing QA QC the next day. So then like by looking at shorter sets of data so that my eyeballs won't melt, I'm able to pretty much figure out, it's like, okay, these are the things that are coming up that we're all listing differently. Let's figure out how we can all list it in the same manner so that when we run a search for that term, that will pop up the way that we want, and then we clean up the data as well. So, right now there's a lot of talking in our team because we're still trying to figure out a lot of things because 1383 is, I guess, still pretty new.
Laura's got good tips too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so concerning the notes, sorry, thank you. My colleagues and I we have different styles. I like to input a lot of detail, but that's because I have more time to do that than my colleagues. And they have to enter notes onto Recyclist, and then on the in the haulers software program. And I actually didn't know about what Lisa just talked about, so I really have to give her a call.
Yeah. Go over. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Sorry to go again, but since we're
No,
talking
please.
about route reviews,
Do it,
I
yeah.
gotta say it. Here's my feedback. I would love to have the output report come as an Excel document instead of a PDF, because you can't do anything with it. Like, so for us, we put in more targets than we actually intend on hitting. So in the event that there's no set out or it's empty, we could possibly hit another one and hit the number of valuable data points that we want. But the way it comes out, it looks as though we didn't hit our targets because some of those are less than 100% done. So that's one piece that has been challenging for me with the route review outputs, just the reports that we're able to get from them. And that's the at-a-glance stuff. I haven't really dug into all the other kinds of tables and charts, and if you've done anything since last fall, then I'm eager to see what the difference are. We're about to do ours again in this fall, but I know last time I talked, and Elena was the one that was doing all the route review stuff, she said, we're not going to be working on this. And so has there been anything significant updated for the route review?
Not to the extent that you're talking about. You can export the completed inspections in Excel format, but I think you're talking about the route review information, like the progress report one.
Correct, yeah. And what we wind up doing is getting the raw data and then doing all the analysis, but back to the, the
Yeah.
manual part. If we're going to use the tool and the way it's, idealized, then it would be a little bit less manual.
No, that's great feedback. And we do have a roadmap specifically for the route review tool. So it hasn't been done yet, as Elena mentioned, but we collected all that info, and the more that you all can tell me or write in and kind of help, like, vote for route reviews on the product, like, that's kind of where we're at right now. It's something that I personally love to push a lot. Linnea probably is so sick of hearing me say it. She knows I'm always asking for the improvements. But the more that we can get our customers speaking up for what they want, then we can push that internally as well. So I don't have a date when that stuff will be implemented, but help us help you, Yeah.
So we have an online question. When downloading data from Recyclist, how can we include pictures in the report? Currently, there is no way to download the data and view the pictures unless you're on Recyclist.
For the route review specifically, I'm assuming.
It's not specified.
Oh, so sweet. That is a great question. I don't know the best way to mass download photos. I'd have to ask our product team, but I can find out.
Stay tuned, online questionnaire. Any other audience questions?
At some point, we need to share the poll results, right?
Oh, yeah, we have.
This is great. And it kind of came up in the question about schools, but do you have data on like what is kind of standard or typical amounts of waste or diversion by like property type or like, fast food restaurant or this type of restaurant? Or like, are you starting to do any like comparative analysis based on like all the data you have of like, oh, well, this one really has way more either capacity or like actually generating way more waste total than another similar sized restaurant or property?
Are you analyzing by business type yet?
I don't know. I don't know.
No.
Maybe.
There's actually some great research out there on that. Like the RAP program in the UK has done a lot of that. I think there's an EPA, like food, it's edible food and inedible food diversion report. Robin, you know what I'm talking about? I could picture it's orange. I'd have to get the name of it. But there is some good data about that, about business types and sectors and making some assessments that way. I think, again, it's hard. It's also still context specific. So the same taco shop in one city might be very different in another city. So I think always want to verify those things. But there's a lot of great consultants that do a lot of that kind of research. And I think the CalRecycle waste characterizations are starting to think that way as well. So
Yeah.
I don't personally have it.
In Milpitas, that's one of the analytics that we haven't gotten around to yet because There were like original four questions that we're trying to answer with the data that we collected. Now that we have all the analysis of that done and we have all the like everything set up so that we can just plug in information, and that we're starting to develop the other like questions that we want answered, and that's one that we have upcoming. And we just haven't done the work yet because unfortunately there's only so much time in the day, and I really don't want to be working like 24 hours a day. I'd like to sleep. So. Sorry to not be of help.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not going to be much help either.
If there's no other questions, we do want to share the results of the poll. Just because, you know, it's interesting. Want to go?
Oh, yeah, you want me to?
Oh, yeah, go for it. You have it up.
All right, so think I shared it back on the app. I don't know. It's crazy. I work in software. So 51 people answered about how implementing 1383 has changed behavior in your jurisdictions. And the leading answer was a little bit. Followed by moderately. Only 6 out of 51 said significantly, and 4 said not at all. So I think that says that you can check those compliance boxes and not necessarily be having the level of impact you want to be having. So let's all quote Alan Ha maybe. The regulations really just set the floor, not the ceiling.
And it's just going to take time before we actually realize the impacts from everything that we're doing. And unfortunately, there's no shortcut and there's no app for that. So we'll just keep on plugging away. Yet.
So I just wanted to say the question about pictures, downloading pictures, they did clarify site visits.
Okay.
They want specific information about that. So I'm going to suggest that the person who asked the question online, reach out directly
Find
to
me.
Lisa. She'll find the answer. So.